Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Talk and Tour. I'm Krista Harmon, one of the career readiness consultants with the Kent Intermediate School District. I'm so delighted to partner with Mary Freebed for our Talk and Tour tonight. And we're going to focus on a variety of careers in the rehabilitation side of health careers. And we have five guests with us tonight in a variety of occupations. Like I said, we have Matt Parrish. He's a recreational therapist. We have Lindsay Mochak. She's an O&P resident. And if you don't know what O&P is, don't worry. We're going to explain that for you. Meredith Murphy, she's a rehab technician in the pediatric department. We have Julie Kreitz, she's a physical therapist. And Jeanette Follett, she's a nursing education and started as an RN, and now she's teaching. So we're so glad to have all five of you here tonight. Thanks for being here. Oops, let me just stop my share for a second here. So welcome, everyone. Matt, I'm going to actually start with you. Take us back to high school. Did you think you'd grow up to be a recreational therapist? Did you know that was going on when you were 16?
No, I did not know that recreational therapy was even a thing when I was in high school. I wanted to be a DNR officer out in the woods, catching bad guys that are poaching while they're hunting and fishing. So that was my goal when I was in high school. I wanted to work out in the woods. Went to college for that, and right off the bat. Soon realized that I didn't want to turn that passion of mine into a career, and I wanted to go in a different direction. So my advisor showed me rec therapy, and I looked at what schools offered rec therapy programs. Grand Valley State and Central Michigan University are two in Michigan that have rec therapy programs. I toured both of those universities after I was in college for 3 years. And eventually decided on one of those programs. I went to Grand Valley for the rec therapy program there, and graduated, did my internship at Mary Freebed. Sorry, I think I'm giving you more than what you asked for.
That's okay. I will definitely come back and dig some of that out, but I guess I want to know, I know young people watching this will wonder, like, what was happening, because you had the dream to be the DNR. What was happening that made you like, man, this isn't working for me? What were some of those thoughts? And how did that feel at the time when you're like, man, I got to change? Because I think that's a reality for a lot of young people. So tell us what you were experiencing.
At the time, I had worked in the state park system in Michigan for a couple summers. I had seen some things that I didn't necessarily, not anything that was too alarming or unethical or anything. I had just realized that it wasn't something that I wanted to go into. There was a lot of seasonal jobs in that atmosphere, and I knew that my financial goals didn't align with not being able to work between October and March every year. That wasn't going to work out for myself. Not that that's the case with all of those pursuits, but so that changed my mind a little bit. My sister is a social worker. And hearing some of the stories that she had, after, as she was going into that field and changing people's lives and being able to help others, I was starting to lean towards, I want to be able to impact people's lives in a different way. And that's what I shared with my college advisor. And she said, well, have you ever heard of recreational therapy? I think that you'd be good at this. And I, at that point, that was the first time I had ever heard of it. And I did some homework on it, and I started to email professors at both Grand Valley and CMU to see what that was all about, what the programs look like, what kind of jobs I might be able to have after completing a degree through either one of those programs. And eventually decided on going to Grand Valley. I know that if I would have gone to Central, I'd have received a great education there as well. I worked with a lot of folks from Central, and I've had a lot of interns from Central as well.
Well, just so you know, I'm going to come back to you on some of that, because that's really great that you got some good career advice. And that's why it's so valuable to have you tonight, Matt, is because there's probably some young people watching this that didn't know what recreational therapy is either. So we're going to definitely dig into that. Lindsay, let's go to you. What were you thinking back in high school? Did you think you grew up to be an O&P resident? Did you even know what O&P was at the time?
Oh gosh, no. So for those of you who don't know what O&P is, it's Orthotics and Prosthetics. So prosthetics are the really cool artificial limbs that if you're watching the Olympics, There's the Paralympics that come on right after the Olympics. So like adaptive sports, things like that. And then orthotics is kind of married to it. Orthotics is bracing. So prosthetics is in lieu of a limb, and then orthotics is supporting the limb. And no, in high school, I kind of had a unique background where I'm dyslexic. So back when the schools didn't really know how to teach it, children that had unique learning abilities. So my mom actually took me out of school for a couple of years to homeschool me, to teach me how to learn and how to adapt my learning styles to public schools. And then she threw me back in, and we moved around a lot. So I went to a private Catholic school for 7th and 8th grade, and then 9th grade I went back to public school. So I was trying to figure out who I was in a lot of different school situations, and I wasn't thinking about who I was going to be in 5, 10 years. So when I was in high school, I was just, trying to get through and trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted. But I knew that I loved two things. I loved art. I was really good in art, and I did a lot of AP IB art programs. And I also loved helping people, and I wasn't sure what that looked like. And I was thinking doctor, and then I looked at how much schooling and how vigorous that program was, and I was like, I'm not sure that's quite what I was looking for. And then my brother was an athlete. He was an athlete all throughout high school and college, and he got hurt and did a lot of physical therapy. He had to do a bunch of physical therapy. So I was like, oh, physical therapy is pretty cool. Like, I'm not sure what this is, but I think I like it. And then it wasn't until I did undergrad. I was undergrad with a kind of pre-PT mindset that I started doing hours with physical therapy. And I was like, this is so close to what I love, but I don't think this is it. And it was finals week, my sophomore year of undergrad. And I was doing what we're really good at and not studying. And I was on Pinterest and not doing what I was supposed to at all. And I saw prosthetics, and I saw a veteran with prosthetic limbs. And I was like, what's this? I do have two dogs, as you can hear. And they like to bark at everybody, so I apologize. But yeah, when I saw this military veteran with this prosthetic limb that was this work of art, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is super cool. And I loved the fact that it was artistic and the fact that he was helping people. And so I really did some research into what prosthetics was. And it was the rehab that I loved, walking alongside people, but it's also that hands-on, that I get to create something as well. And I was like, this is it. This is my career. So I didn't know what I wanted to be, but it kind of just grew. And as I grew as a person, figured out what I liked and what I didn't like, I kind of just fell into it naturally. But I had no idea what prosthetics was in high school. But then when I found it, I was like, this is pretty cool.
Well, I think what's great is to really pull out of that is that you kept exploring too, right? And not to, encourage everyone to go on Pinterest when you're supposed to be studying, but I'm glad that worked out for you. And I love that that's a very unique find, and that you were inspired. There was something that you saw that inspired you. So for the young people watching this, keep seeking and trying, and you never know what's going to come across your path. I love that. So Meredith, what about you when you were in high school? Did you think you'd grow up to be a rehab tech? You might want to just give a quick definition of that as well, which I probably should have done with Matt. We'll come back to that, Matt. You can describe what rec therapy is in a minute. But tell us what a rehab tech is, Meredith, and what you're thinking back in high school.
So I am the outpatient pediatric rehab tech, and I keep the unit clean and up to date with infection control procedures. And I also assist. I do a lot of hands-on assisting, and I also recently have been doing in-pool assist, which is really cool. And I get to do other things like casting and keeping track of equipment and ordering. So all the fun stuff to be like the go-to for everyone, basically.
Yeah, that's probably really exciting for young people hearing that, for sure. Did you even know that existed back in high school?
No, but what's funny is I knew exactly what I wanted to do in high school, because at my 8th grade career fair, I found occupational therapy, which is what I ultimately want to do. And so I wanted to do absolutely whatever I could to get as close to occupational therapy. And luckily, I volunteered a few years at Mary Free Bed, and I knew I wanted a job there. And the woman who was in my position was actually retiring. So it was a great opportunity for me to get into Mary Free Bed, and it's worked out ever since. It's been wonderful.
And I love that. We're definitely going to dig into all of your stories about things that you can do to help get these experiences. So, and I love that, very affirming to the teachers who have career days in 8th grade that you discovered your path back then. That's so fantastic. So thanks for sharing that. How about you, Julie? What were you thinking? Well, physical therapy, go ahead and give us a quick definition of that, but then share what you were thinking back in high school.
Sure. So a physical therapist helps with mobility, moving, walking, things you need to do during the day. So we look at strength and balance. And I work in the hospital, so we're very basic as far as, can you get out of bed? Can you stand up? Can you take some steps? Do you need a walker? Do you need a cane? Do you need crutches? Do you have stairs in your house? How are you going to get up and down those stairs? Do you need a wheelchair? So we're looking at all those things to make people function well in their home. When I was in high school, my mom worked in the hospital, but she worked in the lab, and occasionally she would take us into the hospital for events that they would have. And I just loved being in the healthcare environment. I just thought it was so cool. And when I was little, I just liked riding the elevator, but I grew to love the place. And so in high school, one of my classes I had was anatomy, and I really loved anatomy. So I'm thinking, okay, I think I want to do something in healthcare. I was always into sports, and I volunteered at the hospital on a maternity ward to start out with, just to kind of get a feel for what goes on in the hospital. And I kind of weeded some things out with that. I knew I didn't want to do nursing because I didn't want to have to poke people. I was thinking at the time, maybe I wanted to be a doctor, but then the doctors have such limited time with patients. They kind of come in and come out, and the next person. And I felt like I wanted to be able to spend a little more time with people. And then I volunteered at Mary Free Bed, and in their rehab gym, I got to watch a whole bunch of things going on. But I remember watching a therapist help somebody relearning how to walk after an injury in the parallel bars. And I'm like, that is really cool. That is what I want to do. And I took off from there. So.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into some of those steps, because I think that's really, really important, some of the steps you took to figure that out. And I definitely want to bring some attention to that in our next question. Jeanette, what about you? What were you thinking back in high school? And you're a nurse by trade.
Yes, I serve as Director of Interprofessional Education right now, but in high school, I actually wanted to be a nurse, and my family circumstances were not of that nature. My mom said to me, you can't be away from home. I need you to pick up a job that pays earlier, and you need to be at home. So I ended up going into sort of like accounting, tax consulting in Germany. I lived at that time in Germany. I had a high school diploma and then 2 years of apprenticeship program. And for the first couple of years of my working life, I worked basically with numbers, because the circumstances were not right for the other.
Well, go ahead and share that little next part of your story, because I think that's really great how you got to nursing. You were doing numbers, but then some things changed, and you started, and tell us about that first transition into healthcare.
Yeah, I ended up going to the United States to study English, met my husband, got married. For the first couple of years, I was again in business, meaning numbers. And then in 2000, my husband lost employment, and by then we had 2 small children, and I didn't want to be working during the day. I was looking for a nighttime job so that our children wouldn't have to go to daycare. And I ended up working in the ED at night. I got a job as a nurse tech, and I fell so in love with nursing that within 6 months, I decided I would pick up I had a bachelor's in business by then. I would pick up some credits and start going back to school. And by the time my son went to 1st grade, I went to nursing school. And so I got my 2-year degree, and then I got my 4-year degree, and I got my master's, and I, in 2020, got my doctorate in nursing. I'm really excited about what I'm doing. I love my profession, and I've come a long way.
Yes, you have. And it's such an encouragement. I hope young people that are watching this, sometimes there's a lot of anxiety of making a choice at 18 or 19 and being stuck with it for the rest of your life. And I love Jeanette's story that she started off in accounting with numbers, and then she transitioned into healthcare. And now she's in a position where those numbers are part of her work. So always know that everything you're doing is part of your toolkit. You're never wasting time. So I love that part of your story, and we'll definitely come back to you and dig in more. So Matt, go ahead and just start off with what a recreational therapist is, but then let's talk about that education piece of it. And how do you even know what major to pick? And go ahead.
So recreation therapy can work in a lot of different atmospheres, from behavioral health, physical rehab, geriatrics. In physical health, at Mary Free Bed, we are all about getting folks back into doing the things that they love to do. So their leisure and recreation pursuits are the main focus of our line of work. So if someone really enjoys hunting and fishing, it's our job to come alongside them and figure out how they are going to hunt or fish again. If someone enjoys sewing and knitting, or going to antique shops, then that's our focus. We're trying to make sure that they can either overcome their barriers, or certainly overcome their barriers, figure out ways around certain barriers that they might be experiencing after they had a stroke or a spinal cord injury or a brain injury, or whatever they might be dealing with. You guys might be hearing my 4-month-old child hollering in the background. So that's what that's all about.
Dogs and babies are the best part of the Zoom world.
Yes, for sure. Let's see. Yeah, we're all about getting folks back into doing whatever it is that they love to do. So our job looks different every day based on two things: what our patients' barriers are that they're dealing with, and what things they enjoy doing. I might have 10 stroke patients, and they all enjoy doing different things. And the treatment for each one of them is going to look similar in some ways and different in a lot of other ways too. So
let's just go back just a little bit, Matt. I love this information. It's all good, but I want young people to understand, is it a 4-year degree? Is it a 2-year degree? Does it matter what the undergrad is? Do you have to get a master's anyway? Kind of help us with the specifics around the education.
Just a 4-year degree for rec therapy. If you are going into, say you go into college knowing that you want to be in the rec therapy program at Grand Valley, you have to be accepted into that program for the first 2 years. I don't know if they call it pre-recreational therapy there or not. I did my first 3 years and got a bunch of my classes out of the way when I was at Lake State up in Sault Ste. Marie, trying to go into Department of Natural Resources work. So I didn't necessarily start in pre-recreational therapy. Once I decided that I was going to change my major, I started tackling a few different classes up there before I transferred, and then came right into the program at Grand Valley, which is once you get accepted into the program, it's 2 years. So it took me 5 years.
It's not everyone has a rec therapy program, like you were saying earlier. So this is one of those things, as young people, you can start to investigate that and then read what those prerequisites are, what the requirements are, so that you understand that process. But go ahead. Did you do any, as part of your education, did you have to do an internship or any other practicums or anything?
Yes. So we have at Grand Valley, they call it a field work and then an internship. The field work is, I believe it's 300 hours that you have to complete. People usually do it over the summertime. You have to be in the rec therapy or related field. With it being the or related, that means that you don't have to certainly be under a CTRS, which is what our credentials are after you pass the exam. That's Certified Therapeutic Recreation Specialist. So for your field work, you don't have to be under a CTRS. I did mine at a camp in Carbondale, Colorado, for kids and adults on the autism spectrum. And we had them rock climbing and whitewater rafting, riding horseback through the mountains, all kinds of fun stuff out there. But there was not a CTRS employed by that company. It was adaptive recreation. We were working with with people with different abilities. So it fit our criteria for field work. So I was there all summer long, but for my internship, that's 600 hours is what Grand Valley required when I was in school. I think it might be 560 hours now, which is 15 weeks. So people will do that during a college semester. Typically, it's over the summertime. And that has to be under one CTRS. So you will, if you do a recreational therapy internship, you'll be paired with one CTRS for that amount of time within the field somewhere, whether it's in physical medicine, behavioral health, wherever it might be. So those
Thank
are
you.
the criteria there.
It's good for young people to hear some of these requirements. And I will be giving a website at the end that students, you can do more specific research on some of these, but I want you to kind of hear some of those experiences from people and maybe, think about what you could be doing in high school to even get some of that experience to make sure it's a good fit. So we'll round back to you. Thanks, Matt. Lindsay, as far as an O&P resident, and help young people even know what a resident is, what undergrad did you get then? And what was the educational pieces that you might want young people to know about?
Yeah, so educational for me looks a little bit like a 4-year bachelor's degree. My specific bachelor's degree was in kinesiology and art. So kinesiology is the study of human movement. So it was a lot of physiology classes, so moving, sports medicine, dietitian. We did metabolism classes, anatomy classes. So really looking at the human body from a bunch of different angles. Kinesiology is, for an undergraduate degree, is also a really common degree for physical therapy too. So those classes that I was taking were able to cross, because I had the mind for PT, physical therapy. That's kind of the direction that I was going. And then I kind of split off and went a little left instead of right, which was totally fine. And then I went to a 2 years master's degree, which was for prosthetics and orthotics. So the actual degree was a master's in health sciences, the way that specializes in prosthetics and orthotics. So in between my undergrad and grad, I did not get into grad school right away. I'm gonna be honest, there are lucky few that get in right away. I was not one of those. So I spent 2 years I worked as a physical therapy assistant, and I also did hours at our local O&P clinics. And then I worked at a Mercy hospital in admin. So a little bit of a lot of things, because I was trying to get as much knowledge that I could in a bunch of different fields. And I loved it. I loved working at the hospital. So then after 2 years, I applied to a couple different graduate programs. There's 11 grad schools for O&P throughout the United States. So Michigan has one, Northwestern has one. I went to California State, so I was out in California for 2 years. Washington has one. Texas has two. So there's far and few between. But once I got in, I did 2 years in O&P, and then after you graduate with your master's, you do a residency in orthotics and a residency in prosthetics. So I do a year, essentially just learning under clinicians. So I'm about to finish with my orthotic residency next month. So I will have done a whole year, and then I'll take a bunch of tests for my boards for my certification. And then I will work under a couple different clinicians for prosthetics for the next year after that. And then after that, I will take a couple more tests and be completely certified in prosthetics and orthotics.
Well, I think it's so great. And I love this event to help young people understand the realities, because it's not helpful for young people to think it's all smooth sailing. And so the fact that you didn't get into grad school is really important, because how did you cope with that? Because I'm sure it was really disappointing. Like, what do you want to say to young people when those kind of parts of life happen, when it goes off the track that you think was gonna be?
Well, it's super scary, because even when you go off to college and you have an undergraduate idea of what you're going to do, and then you realize this isn't what I want to do. And then you're like, oh my goodness, is my degree still going to be worth it? And then you graduate with this degree and you're like, oh my goodness, what do I do with this degree? And it's scary. And just knowing that my mom would always tell me that you don't really fail, you just fail forward. So if you try something, try again. And if we decide that we still don't like it, there's always going to be another avenue. And my path wasn't super straight. I zigzagged along the way and I learned so much. And I still got to where I wanted to be. And you have so much time, even though you're going to feel like you have to have it figured out right away. And you're going to feel kind of like a failure sometimes if you don't get into your first school choice or your second school choice or your third school choice, or you do, and then you get a degree and then you do it all over again and you don't get into your first school choice and you don't get into your second school choice. But the school that, like my grad school that I got into, was phenomenal. And it wasn't my first or my second choice, but it was the right choice. And as long as you're moving in a direction, even if it's not the direction that you think it should be, you're still moving. So as long as you're moving, you're going to end up somewhere fantastic.
I think everybody should put that on a big piece of paper in their bedrooms, young people. It's reality. You're failing forward. I love that your mom said that, but you're moving forward, you're learning, and you don't know what you don't know. And you didn't know that California was gonna be the right place for you. And I just love, but just to normalize the feelings that are there when that happens. So thank you so much for sharing that and being honest. I think that's really helpful to young people. Meredith, you're very fortunate that in such a young age that you realized what you wanted. So you started taking some very active steps and were volunteering, and then got this rehab tech. What are some of the steps that you know that you're going to continue to do to get to that dream job of OT?
Well, I definitely have to go back to grad school, but I did just get this job in September and I absolutely fell in love with it. And just to talk about reality a little bit, I was really procrastinating my grad school application. And I think that's when I knew I didn't want to go yet. I fell in love with what my current job is. I'm getting all the experience I need. Well, not all the experience I need, I'm sure there's more, but it's a fantastic place to be and you get to see a little bit of everything. And I'm just so fortunate to have found this position. And I don't feel like I'm missing out on grad school right now. I feel like I'm in the right place I'm supposed to be as well.
Yeah. What did you end up getting your undergrad in?
Exercise science.
So again, help young people understand that there's a little flexibility in some of the undergrad if you want to go to OT or PT or whatever. You don't have to have a kinesiology or exercise science. You could do biology. I mean, there's a variety, right? Because there's a lot of anxiety for young people to have to pick just the right major. So you do exercise science. That's great. Because how old are you? Do you mind me asking?
No, that's fine. I'm 22.
Yeah, you're 22. Who says there's a time frame that we have to have all this education done by a certain time, right?
Exactly.
Thank you for being honest with it. Why not keep learning what you're doing, and you're still learning about different specialties and experiences, and you'll get there. So I love that you have a job that you're enjoying, and grad school will come eventually if you decide to go that way. You might learn about something else in the process.
Right.
So thank you. Julie, for you, physical therapy, obviously students can look this up, but tell us a little bit about how you chose your undergrad, how you chose what college, just with those transitions, because that's helpful to young people.
I went to Grand Valley and it was relatively close to home. My parents both went to Grand Valley, so that's kind of how I ended up there. But there are quite a few colleges or universities in Michigan that physical therapy. And you don't have to go to the college that has the physical therapy program. You apply to grad school later. But it was helpful to be at Grand Valley that did have a physical therapy program because they had different clubs, like a pre-physical therapy club you could be involved in and get more information. It set you up with some connections there. I did a health sciences degree. It seemed to be the most direct route for me because there are some requirements that they want you to see that classes you have taken. So most of those fit under health science for me, but there were people, kinesiology or exercise science or pre-med. We had some people with athletic training background. So a lot of different ways you can go with that.
Yes, and I want to round back a little bit too of just being part of the clubs. I think a lot of young people, especially if you're first generation, don't understand even some of those things that happen at college. And when you were in high school, you did the volunteering. You were taking very active steps to be in a hospital setting to learn. And so when you were in college, you did like these clubs. Tell us just a few things, why those kind of things are so important. What were your takeaways from being part of a PT club, for example?
Well, there's people in all different phases of getting ready to apply. to physical therapists, give you tips and tricks, like they went through the interview process or they had to fill out the application, and this is what they did. We had different speakers come in from all different fields to kind of talk about different aspects of physical therapy. I got connected with a functional electrical stimulation project where they had a spinal cord person coming in and riding a bike hooked up to electrodes that I wouldn't have had that opportunity to do. So you just meet a lot of different people.
Yeah, that's such a great encouragement for young people who are watching this to be intentional with some of those extracurricular things, because you're going to meet people or see. And I'm sure Meredith's gaining some information from the session for herself, right? So Jeanette, when we think about education, and you had mentioned that, you started as like a nurse assistant, and then you got your 2-year degree and your 4-year degree. What about education would you want young people to know that are watching this? What should they consider about a 2-year nursing degree? Because I think a lot of people don't even know that exists.
Yeah, so for me, it was very interesting. I knew that I was already a mom, had 2 children and a husband, and we had just faced some economic challenges. And I was on the waiting list for all kinds of places. I already had a 4-year degree. I played a little bit of Russian roulette. I put my name everywhere out there. And one day I took a virtual class at a 2-year college, basically at KCC in Battle Creek. And they said to me, you know what, you meet the prereqs for the nursing program. Do you want me to put you on the list? I had taken only, like I said, an online class. I said, sure, what's another waiting list? And they put me on the waiting list. And before I knew it, I was in a class at GVSU. I get a call and they said, we just called people off the waiting list and people have chosen other places and there's an opening. Do you want it? So within a day and a half, I spent some $600, bought all this stuff for nursing school, had no idea where Battle Creek on the map really was because I had only attended virtually. I knew it would take me an hour and 15 minutes to get there. And I, clicked off the roster my 4-year degree course and said, I'm canceling out on you. I'm going now to Battle Creek to go into the 2-year nursing program. It was a bold move because it meant that for 2 years, for 4 days a week, I would be getting up very early and coming home often very late. But it was a good move because the program was very reasonably priced, and between tuition reimbursement that I received as a nurse tech and the little money that I had spent, after 2 years, I was a full-fledged RN and I earned money. And then I went to my employer again and I said, can you help me out? I want to get my bachelor's. And so most of my 4-year degree was covered by my reimbursement. I probably paid some money, but not an awful lot of money. And then I did the same thing with my master's, and most of it was paid because there was somewhere around the corner tuition reimbursement. I wasn't quite as lucky with my doctorate because that was a lot more expensive, but even there the employer paid some. And so I really earned early on decent money, had wonderful flexibility because in nursing you choose your hours based on where you go. And I took full advantage of those opportunities.
That's great. I think young people may not know as much about tuition reimbursement. So I'm glad that came up today because young people, that is a thing. Many companies are offering those kind of benefits, and it could also be one way you choose one company over another to find out what their education benefits are. And college debt doesn't have to be your reality, especially in healthcare, because hospitals will pay for that. So get your foot in the door, do what Meredith's doing, start working, and then you can tap into those. And we're going to come back to you, Jeanette, to talk about what rehab nursing is even versus like at a acute hospital. So Matt, you started sharing a little bit about what a recreational therapist does. So give us any more you want about that, but I'd like to know what your favorite part about your job is and what your least favorite is. But anything else you want to share about the actual job too, feel free.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit more. We at Mary Free Bed anyways, we get in the pool a lot. So we have adaptive aquatics, helping people get back into swimming. So we get to use the pool there. That's something special that we do. Some other disciplines definitely get in the pool at Mary Free Bed as well. PT, OT gets in the pool. And then we also do community outings, which is probably one of my more favorite parts of the job, is getting people back into the community. For example, a patient who say got in a car accident and is now going to be spending the rest of their lives in a wheelchair. Going back into the community that first time is usually something that is pretty daunting for them, as far as, navigating the community, as well as being in public and having, wondering if everyone's going to be staring at you. So that's something that I really enjoy tackling with our patients, is going out into the community and showing them that that they can definitely still live their lives and be in the public as much as they want to be, and showing them how to tackle different, or how to get beyond barriers that they might find in the community. So that's a lot of fun. My favorite part of my job, it might sound kind of selfish, but I really love it when my patients' leisure interests really align with my leisure interests. Then we can spend a lot of time doing things that we both love to do. And a lot of times it's easier for me to adapt those activities. And for me, those are hunting and fishing. We get a lot of patients at Mary Free Bed that love to do those two things, and to be able to talk with them and share stories. Not everyone, but a lot of people know that fishermen like to tell stories, and a lot of times they're stretching the truth. And to be able to have those connections with patients is a lot of fun for me. So I'd say that's probably my favorite part.
And then, and I've heard that, I'm not sure it was you or a colleague, one of their patients loved concerts. So of course they had to take their client or their patient to a concert.
That was me.
That's a rough job there, Matt.
Yeah, so we get that a lot, and my family gave me a lot of crap for that one too. We had one of the donors, I think it was one of the donors for Mary Free Bed, came into the rec therapy office one day and said, "I have 2 tickets to the Eagles concert." A lot of the students listening to this right now probably have no idea who the Eagles are.
Probably.
They said, "I got 2 tickets to the Eagles concert. Who has a patient, or who has, like, in the pediatric unit, who has a pair of parents that would enjoy going to this concert?" And at the time I had the perfect patient. He was a stroke survivor, and every day he had a different rock and roll t-shirt on. He had Pearl Jam on one day and REO Speedwagon the next, and then the Eagles, and then Boston. He had them all. And I was like, nobody say anything. I got the perfect guy. And I ran upstairs to his room and I said, "Hey, you want to go to the Eagles concert on Thursday?" It was like last minute. It was that week. And his response, I think he told me to shut up, because he thought that he was like, "That's probably the meanest thing you could do. There's no way I'm going to a concert. Why would you dangle that in front of me?" And I was like, "All I need is a response. This is the real deal. All you got to do is say yes, and they're ours." And he said, "Yeah, I'll go." So I ran back.
Probably, but anxious about his disability and wondering how he truly was going to navigate. So that was very overwhelming for him to think about it, right?
For sure. It definitely was. And we got the tickets, and we went to Van Andel Arena where the concert was being held. We had security drop us off at the door so that we didn't have to worry about parking. And we went inside, showed our tickets to one of the folks there. I had assumed that he offering these tickets to take a patient out into the community, they would have had an adaptive seats, but these were floor tickets in the middle of an aisle. And there was no way that we were getting through all of those people. And I knew that if this patient needed to use the bathroom, we wouldn't make it to the bathroom in time. And so we went back to the box office and I said, "Hey, this is our situation. What can we do?" And they said, "Well, those are the tickets that you got. You guys can try to go up to the adaptive seating and see if there's anyone. If there's anyone up there that doesn't show up, you can stay in their spot." So we went up there, found the first open spot, and it was the farthest back seats in Van Andel Arena. There was nobody sitting behind us. It was a brick wall behind us. So we were as far back as you could get. And these 2 ladies showed up, and both of them were up and walking, and they didn't need adaptive seating. And I said, we can move out of your seats and we'll find a different open spot. And they said, "No, we're just going to stand up and dance the whole concert anyways. You guys can have the spot." So we watched the Eagles that night and got back to Mary Free Bed about 11 o'clock at night, and I went home.
That's the thing about rec therapy, young people, is that you get to help people leisure. So it's rehab, but fun. So if you're a fun person, this could be your job. So thanks for sharing that, Matt.
Yep.
Lindsay, what about you? What is your favorite part that you've experienced so far about your career as a O&P resident? Why is this such a good fit?
Yeah, so goodness, there's just so many things, and I could talk about so many instances, but
Yeah, 3
for
minutes.
me, okay, 3 minutes. So I guess with prosthetics and orthotics, Mary Free Bed is super unique because we do a lot of inpatient, most of which means we work with people who are in the hospital. Outpatient is when people come to an appointment. So there are a lot of prosthetic and orthotic clinics where it's just outpatient and people come in to see you and they leave. And for me, the thing that I find the most special about Mary Free Bed is the fact that I get to do a lot of hospital, meaning I get to work with a lot of patients that are inpatients. And our patients are either people who have suffered from a stroke, or they've gotten in some sort of motor vehicle accident, or there's some sort of traumatic event that has happened that has allowed them to come to our facility for rehab. And I have personally had family members in and out of hospitals for various things. I had a family member with cancer, a family member with a heart attack, family member who needed a lot of rehab services. So I've been on the opposite end of the hospital, and knowing what a great provider and the people who do the littlest things that mean the world. Because you've had the worst day of your life and you're sitting in the hospital after the worst day of your life, and quite frankly, you're in a bad mood and it's hard and it stinks, and you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you have these people who walk in and they take care of you and they grab you by the hand and they lead you and they say, okay, today might be the worst day, but tomorrow we're going to get a little bit better. And you might have good days and you might have bad days. And so for me, my favorite part of my job is the fact that I get to do that for other people. And I've been on both sides of the screen now, and just sitting with patients and just listening. And yes, my job is prosthetics and helping people walk with artificial limbs, and orthotics and bracing limbs of people who have weaknesses so that they can walk. But it's also so much more. It's sitting and listening to these stories and walking alongside people where this is the first time getting back up and walking after a traumatic event, and watching the family watch progress is just so cool, because usually they come with us to our hospital needing therapy, and then when they leave, a lot of times they're walking out, and it might not be the way that they started 10 years ago, but it might be a whole lot better than like from when that first accident happened. So just watching the progress and the therapy and watching us come together as a team to make a difference in someone's life is just, it's super cool.
Yeah, I've taken groups of students on tours there, and a student said to me one time, she said, I feel like this place is what hope looks like. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so true, because a rehabilitation hospital is very different. And we'll, probably talk about that with Jeanette. Thanks for sharing that. Meredith, you're in this job that you love. Why?
There's so many reasons. Being a rehab tech, you kind of get to oversee everything going on in the unit. So that's a really cool part of it. But I love being the extra set of hands. Assisting is by far my favorite thing. And I've actually, like I said, I've been in the pool with some patients, and I just recently switched from in-pool assisting to on-land assisting with that patient. And to see that progress and see how the two can work together is like incredible. It's just, you get to see things I never thought. And also getting the opportunity to cast. I never thought as a tech I'd be able to cast patients. So that's been absolutely awesome too.
You're learning so many things. That must be a really wonderful thing.
I am. And yeah, you definitely learn a lot of problem solving skills while you're in this position. So it's been very good for myself.
Just one quick question, because I think we might have skipped over this for you. If someone wanted to be a rehab tech today, do they need a degree? Can they apply online and get it? Like what is needed to be a rehab tech?
Yeah, all you need is a high school diploma, and you can just apply through Mary Free Bed's website. They post their job openings often, and you can, I think I kind of had a few contacts because I was volunteering. So that's how I learned about the position opening up. But they definitely keep that open on their website. And yeah, you
Yeah,
only
I
need
think-
a high school diploma.
Excellent. Yeah, I think some of those things you were doing very proactively certainly opened up that door for you. And I'm, like I said, I'm thrilled to hear that you're enjoying that so much and that you're able to articulate that you're that extra set of hands. That'll be interesting how your career goes so that you really have that component.
Yeah,
For
thank
sharing
you.
that. Julie, what's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part is also probably the hardest part. It's such a privilege, like Lindsay was saying, to walk with people during probably the hardest time in their life. You know, they just lost a limb. They have a brain tumor. They had a heart attack. They were in a car accident and they have a bunch of broken bones and they don't know where to go, or they don't know how they're going to do this again. And I can't do this. And to be able to get to show them, this is how you're going to do it. This is how we're going to get you home. This is how you're going to start moving forward again. So that's the best part.
Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about all of your careers. And so Jeanette, because you're we're trained as an RN, a registered nurse, and I know that you're in a different role now, but help your people understand how the nursing is different. And this is where they can start to do some self-assessment, like, oh, that seems like a better fit for me than maybe like a Spectrum Health in the ER when people are coming with, you know, a gunshot wound. That's a different type of nursing than what you're doing at Mary Free Bed. So help them understand that. And then tell us about your current job, because I think I want young people to understand the variety of career paths that even as a nurse you got to take.
I'm going to tell the story that I normally tell our new hires. I started out as a nurse tech in the ED, and I feel on most days that I have come full circle, because when I took my first RN job, I worked on a med-surg unit and then on a telemetry unit. And then thereafter, I worked in the ED, in the emergency department as a clinical nurse specialist. And then I took an education oversight job at Spectrum, and I got to feel out things like med-surg peds and ICU and emergency and family births and surgery. And so I've come full circle. I've seen how people have been rescued in the emergency department. When I came to Mary Free Bed, my first thought was, I don't know if rehab will be enough for me. I really worried a little bit about it. I was at that time looking for some managerial opportunities, and it was offered to me. And I learned a very, very valuable lesson. Rehab is like standing on two legs. You have to have medical surgical knowledge to meet the other needs that patients have, because they don't just have rehab needs. They often have underlying diseases. They have diabetes, heart failure, you name it. And so I, over time, appreciated more and more that a rehab nurse has to stand on two legs. She has to understand, he or she has to understand the rehab component of the care, but also the med-surg component. And so when I talk to my new hires, I tell them that they're going to get double bang for the buck, because they're going to really do the work of two professionals. And they get to do what we call sometimes the fun pieces, hard work. But, you know, everybody out here shared how cool it is and the pieces that they do. And we get to experience that as well. We carry some of these pieces, but we also do the diabetes, the congestive heart failure, the renal failure, whatever the patient carries, the wound care. The sky is the limit. And that's my other encouragement, because I tried different things. I encourage you to try different things. If this is not for you, whatever you try at that time, there are many other things out there. You could be an administrator. You could be a community nurse. You could be sitting in the ICU if that's what your heart ticks for. The sky is the limit. Please don't settle just because maybe one position isn't the very best for you. There are different opportunities out there.
That's golden right there, everyone, what you're hearing. It's really good stuff. So tell us what your job is currently.
When I took my managerial position, I became a director of interprofessional education. So I have two different teams. One team that oversees clinical education. And at first it was just nursing. And I don't mean just, but over time it has grown. Now we design education, sometimes with therapy, with nutrition management, with respiratory, with who knows who, and we deliver and design together. So that's where that interprofessional piece comes in. That's one side of my job. The other portion of my job is to work also on professional development. So we create all kinds of education pieces in terms of grand rounds, workshops, seminars, and conferences, and we provide continued education credits, so meaning professional development. So I own a clinical piece and also a professional development piece. And again, my numbers from the past are coming in real handy because, to your point, you use all the pieces that you gain over time. So your life experiences play out, but also your professional experiences. And so I feel very, very fortunate and blessed. I get to do both. I see the clinical and I see students, I see new hires, and then I see professionals who want to grow. And that's amazingly rewarding.
Yeah, and I just want young people to understand too that sometimes different interests can come together, because I have students who are like have a teacher's heart, but they also love the medical. So you can be a teacher in education. So that's why I wanted to hear about that, because there's many opportunities as you go through your career. All right, we have about 7 minutes before, so I have 2 questions. So we're going to do kind of a speed round. I need to hear in 1 or 2 sentences what you don't like about your job, because I want young people to have a little bit of a reality check. So Matt, you start.
What I don't like about my job, rec therapy isn't covered by insurance companies most of the time. The insurance companies that cover rec therapy right now, which is it's kind of in is auto insurance and workman's comp. So at Mary Free Bed, because it's not covered, a lot of times people say, or at least they used to say, rec therapy comes with the sheets at Mary Free Bed. So it's something that the hospital sees the value in rec therapy enough to still have us on staff and have us working with patients, and they pick up the cost of what it is that we do with patients. When you find yourself in a field that is covered by the hospital in that way, sometimes during hard times for the facility financially, you're sometimes the first person on the chopping block or one of the first groups on the chopping block. Luckily, we've gone through budget cuts at Mary Free Bed before, and we're still there. So as long as you're, representing the field in a good way and making sure that you are providing some sort of value to the company, then I think that's how you can really hold on to your position and make sure that you're representing your field as best as you can. That's probably my least favorite part about the job. I wish that sometimes it was more secure, and it would certainly be more secure if it was covered by insurance companies and we were being reimbursed for the things that we do. But I wouldn't. I did know that going into the job a little bit. That was one of the things that the professors at Grand Valley and CMU told me, that that's going to be something that might be a barrier in that profession someday. And I decided to move forward anyways, and I'm glad that I did.
That's great. Darn insurance.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's reality. Lindsay, in our speed round, worst thing about your job?
I wouldn't say the worst, but the hardest thing about the job is because we're a rehabilitation hospital, a lot of the getting better has to do with the drive of the patient. And do you want to get better or not? And the hardest part is providing patients the tools to succeed and the patient not wanting the tools. So we call that non-compliance. So when we have patients that just, they stopped caring, or they just don't want to, or it's too hard. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. But I think the hardest part is trying to help someone who's not ready for help yet.
Yeah, that would be tough. And just for students that are watching this, Mary Free Bed has psychologists on staff, because there's a lot of psychological factors when you've just lost a limb or have a life altering. So thank you for sharing that. How about you, Meredith? Anything you don't like? I know you love your job.
I know. I was going to say, I personally would say downtime, because I feel like I'm doing something wrong. But if you don't like cleaning or organizing, it's probably not the position for you. That is a big part of it because we do want to make it a safe place for our patients and therapists. But yeah, it's a really great job.
I love it. All right, Julie, what's one of the maybe downsides of PT?
I would say paperwork, partly because I like to be up moving, talking to people, and I don't like to be stuck in front of the computer on paperwork. And sometimes we have to deal with insurance issues too, or clarifying orders, or I'd rather be working with patients. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then Jeanette, and then I'll have one more question for you guys, and then we'll let you go, and I will show the guest today a great video of Mary Free Bed. So Jeanette, what's one of the things you don't necessarily like about your job?
When I think about nurses and charting, we have to chart a lot of things to meet requirements, to satisfy requirements. Sometimes we spend so much time charting that I think, why couldn't we spend that time with patients? But if it's not charted, it's not done. So we have to do the right thing. And that, to me, takes a little bit away from patient care. In my next life, I'm going to invent something that will allow us to just talk and not chart, and everything will be taken care of, and we just spend time with patients.
You'll be answering a lot of nurses' prayers on that one for sure. All right, with our last 2 minutes, everyone, I want you to think of a final word of wisdom to share with the young person who is career exploring, or, so you have two choices here, a word of wisdom, just kind of around exploration, or what you would do in high school, gives them some maybe idea they could be doing now to kind of prepare themselves, maybe something they might not know about. And I know we'll start with you, Matt, and then I'll take you to Lindsay.
Yeah, my word of wisdom would be job shadow and volunteer as much as you can. If you want to work in healthcare, go shadow or come shadow any of us at Mary Free Bed, and you can get an inside look at the job. And you can see if it's something that you are interested in, or if you're like, absolutely not. Being a rec therapist is not something that I want to do. You can at least cross it off and know that that's not something that you want to do, instead of be wondering about it. The sooner you can narrow it down as to what it is that you want to be doing, that just allows you to have more focus in your education and confidence that you're going in the right direction. So job shadow, and volunteer as much as you can. And each one of those opportunities, whether you job shadow or you volunteer, if those are places that you someday want to do your field work or your internship or get a job, those are really, really long interviews is the way I like to look at them. If you go there and you have no experience at Mary Free Bed whatsoever, and you're relying on a 30-minute interview for them to want to hire you, and you're going up against someone that volunteered there for 15 weeks, you might lose out to the person that's been there for 15 weeks. So be that person that's been there volunteering for a few semesters, or even just for one semester. And then before the volunteer experience, you can, do those job shadows and just let those professionals that are going to be the people deciding whether or not you're going to do your internship or get hired there. Let them get to know you. For the world of, I think this goes for all healthcare, but for rec therapy especially, it's a very small world. We all of us really, really know each other. And if there's not an opening at one position or at one company, they might say, hey, but I got a friend that I went to school with, and they work at the Grand Rapids Home for Vets, and they're looking for a rec therapist right now. And I know that you're good. I'll tell them that you're on your way. So
that's great.
Job shadow and volunteer as much as possible, and get yourself out there.
For any of our guests, stick around. I have the name and number and email of the volunteer person at Mary Free Bed, so stick around for that. Thanks for that. Appreciate you being here today. How about you, Lindsay? And we'll go quickly. I know it's 7:01, but I want to hear any advice that you might have.
Yeah, my advice is it's okay not to know. And just remove the weight and the stress of having to figure out your life out at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I was my brother and I were first generation college students, so we had no idea what we were doing for most of our young adult life, and it's okay. And I think that we can feel the stress and the anxiety of day-to-day living, but then you compile that with trying to figure out the worries of tomorrow. And I would just say, just figure out today, tomorrow will come soon enough, and remove the stress of having to have everything figured out right now. It's going to happen and it's going to be okay, whatever happens.
I totally agree. That's awesome mentor advice. And just, I appreciate you being here tonight just to give your experience, because that's going to help somebody else along their path. So thank you today, Lindsay. Meredith, what would you like to say?
Get experience. I agree with Matthew on that. It's definitely great to volunteer. And I'm actually a volunteer supervisor. So if you are interested, come hang out with me in the pediatric unit and I can give you a more in-depth dive into it.
That's great. Love that. Julie?
Same thing. I learned a lot just by volunteering and taking advantage of all the opportunities that were in front of me. And if I had to tell myself something looking back, is not to be so stressed about the big picture. You just kind of take it a day at a time, a week at a time, a year at a time. You don't look at the whole 6-8 year program and be stressed about it the whole time. It all works out.
Yeah, I hope the young people who are watching this or their parents are taking a breath. So again, thank you, Meredith, for being here. Julie, thank you so much. And Jeanette, you're coming in at the last. Give us that last good word.
That last good word is ask many, many questions. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't settle for second best and follow your heart.
Golden. Awesome stuff. You guys have been awesome career mentors. Thank you so much for giving your time tonight.